Welcome, one and all, to playoffs today, and four very good games today. Um, I won't say the most amazing day in playoff history. That would be hyperbole, but this was a bit of a step up over yesterday's for sure. I loved it. I loved this entire day, and from the scrappy Miami Heat trying to be competitive despite being completely outmatched to a very surprising, I think, result in both Milwaukee and in LA, where the road teams were expected to not dominate, but at least be a lot more competitive than they were. And it was just flipped on its head. And then it was just a day where nothing really went as people expected it to, right? Um, And then there were, of course, the Zionless Pelicans, who took the OKC Thunder down to the wire. And very many should argue and could argue that the Pelicans could have very easily won that game. And had the OKC Thunder lost that game, I think it would have come down to some very, very questionable decisions by them. But Shea pulls it out. He's one of the best fourth quarter players in the league. So we'll talk about all four games, what these teams showed, which teams are really, really showing. And I'm not too concerned about wins and losses, but there is a significant statistical component to winning the first game. And the team that wins the first game tends to go on and win the series more often than not. Um, but of course, the Raptors lost their first game of the playoffs against Orlando Magic the year they won the championship. It happens, I think, last year. Two teams that lost game one ended up advancing. So it's not game over, but it is a significant hurdle to overcome, especially when those games were winnable. Specifically for the Dallas Mavericks, who were facing a Kawhi-less LA Clippers and got smacked despite making it a little closer towards the end. And of course, most importantly for the Indiana Pacers, who took a 35-point first half from Damian Lillard on the head and then spent every second of the second half trying to make sure that Damian Lillard did not score again. They succeeded in making sure that happened, but they did not win. And there's a lot of questions in Indiana right now. Pascal Siakam, a lot of Raptor fans will be happy to know he played very well from the box score perspective. There's a huge, huge part of why their defense was so lackluster. It's a huge part of, and I'll say this, from a Raptors perspective. If you saw what Jonas Valanciunas did today, if you saw what Ivica Zubac did today, there's at least some coherence to saying, hey, Jakob Poeltl might be a good idea long term. Having that guy in there might be a good idea, because I'll tell you right now that what JV did to Chet Holmgren and what Ivica Zubac did to Daniel Gafford, neither one of those guys will do to a Jakob Poeltl. Now, is that enough to justify, multiple picks and not tanking last season? No. It's just about the player type. It's the player type. And, Jakob Poeltl has never been the type of post scorer really that a Jonas Valanciunas is, but he's a significantly better defender. And so, yeah, there's just some merit to paint protection and paint domination and offensive rebounds. And, those guys presented big time problems for the teams that they were going up against. His size back will watching, like, if the Clippers pull it out against the Mavericks and if the Pelicans upset the OKC Thunder, Is the big man back? It's worth asking. I mean, we're coming off, years in which teams with big centers have typically won championships, right? Marc Gasol, right? Really, it's the OKC, it's the Golden State Warriors that just consistently are the exception to that rule. And even they had Kevon Looney in there, right? But they had Draymond Green. But like, I mean, size. Kevon Looney may be undersized as a center, but he is a girthy big dude. Having size in the middle, paint protection is a very important part, in my opinion, of winning championships. And yeah, so let's talk about these games. So 4 games, starting with the first game, which was supposed to be the least competitive, and proved to be definitely the least competitive, albeit very interesting towards the end. A little tie up between Caleb Martin and I think I think it was a bit of a cheap shot to run into Jason Tatum when he was airbound, and Joe Mazzulla had a pretty hilarious reaction to that after the game. But for the Heat, they come out, they get smoked in the first 4 minutes, and then they make it competitive, and they just kept coming back, coming back, coming back, and they made a huge fourth quarter run, and they pulled it within 12, 13 in the fourth quarter. So let's just take a look at that game in terms of how that went. Jason Tatum does record a triple double. It was about as competitive as you would expect it to be, but again, it's just a team that didn't go away. It didn't completely go away. They continued to try and edge it back. They got as close as 92 to 106, and that's kind of when that Jason Tatum thing happened. And yeah, I mean, the Celtics were just messing around, right? This is a team with a lot of bad habits, right? I mean, initially, it's 2-17 Boston, right? Did they come out? They smoked them in the first 4 minutes. It was just like guns blazing. Jason Tatum three, like it was a ton of threes for this team. And then you get suddenly you're looking up, you're looking up, you're looking up. It's 25-29. They come back, right? And you beat them, beat them, beat them, beat them, and then they kind of come back again, right? And it just kept happening over and over. And I don't think Miami's going to win this series. I think Miami would be very lucky to win a game in this series. Even if Jimmy Butler comes back, I feel like what the Boston Celtics have done to rebuild sort of what they have around this team, it's just very, very impressive and very hard to stop. But that being said, I think they'll continue to play better. I think the Miami Heat have a chance to make a couple of these games interesting, especially if the Boston Celtics take their foot off the pedal, which they have been known to do. In terms of, just who did what for them, they play an 8-man rotation. I think they got a lot from their bench. And Joe Mazzulla has talked about, you can't take that away from them. Like he wants to continue going to his bench unit. And, obviously he has Al Horford, like a sixth starter, but Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, Peyton Pritchard, one of the biggest benefactors of them moving on from Marcus Smart, was that he was going to get some minutes, right? And he's always been kind of like one of those underrated guys that I always felt like could do more with a bigger opportunity, and he's doing it, right? Very egalitarian, sort of spread out. Nobody had to go crazy hero ball. They're probably just coasting through this series. I don't think they have too much of last year on their mind in terms of like, oh, we're going to make an example out of the Miami Heat. I think they're just kind of like, let's just take a whole bunch of jump shots and see where things end up. They took 49 threes in this game. 49. They won everything, and somehow, like they won by 20. But I mean, in terms of just like how this game spun out, they technically took more shots. They technically got more offensive rebounds. They won the stocks department. They're dead even on the steals department for the most part of the game until the fourth quarter, where they kind of just took their foot off the pedal just for like 4 or 5 minutes. I would argue they definitely won the turnover battle. Like there was no advantage. Their largest lead was 34. The Heat never touched a lead in this game. So this is just one of those things where if the Celtics walked into this game and said, we want to beat them by 40, they could have beat them by 40. If they walked in and said, we want to beat them by 60, they probably could have beat them by 60. They're just a team that plays around with their food a lot. And I have a feeling at some point it's going to burn them. This is a real thing going back like a few years. It's weird to talk about the Celtics this way because I love a lot of the players in the Boston Celtics. In fact, I love all the players in the Boston Celtics. Surprise, like really like all of them, right? I love Jason Tatum. I love Jaylen Brown. I like Kristaps Porzingis. There's really nobody on this team that I do not like. And yet, I have to say, going back even to Eastern Conference appearances, finals appearances, multiple finals appearances, they have always just shown this like lack of maturity that I think just consistently bites them in the ass. I hope they figure it out. A lot of people were really worried about moving off of Marcus Smart because he was sort of that adult in the room. And you take one of those guys out, but granted, you put one of those guys back in Drew Holiday, and I think he's really a big deal for them. And I hope that he can have a bit of more authorship. But it's just the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum thing, right? They're kids sometimes, and yeah, I hope this is the year where it's just humility takes over, right? Like you're a very good team, you're a 64-win team. Nobody can take you. No one can beat you. But on nights where you're supposed to beat teams by 30 or 40, you see them playing around with potentially getting beaten by the Pistons, right? Like this is just a team that does not bring it consistently, and that's sad because when they do bring it, like they are unstoppable. I don't think anyone in the league can beat them. Um, but that lack of maturity is why I would pick teams like Minnesota or even a team like Dallas or even a team like Denver or the Clippers to maybe give them a series, if not beat them outright. It's not because those teams are more talented than these guys, because by committee, I can't think of a team that has 5 players better than these guys. Like it's insane. Like you can make a case that okay, Jason Tatum is not quite on the level of a Nikola Jokic and a Joel Embiid, but find me 3, 4 players who are on this level, of a Kristaps Porzingis, Jason Tatum. It's an embarrassment of riches. Like their top 4 guys, their 5th guy might be an all-star. like, like what are we talking about? This is a team that is just, it reminds me of one of my favorite teams of all time, which is the Portland Trailblazers, like the 2000, 2001, 2002 Portland Trailblazers, where it's just like, it's a depth thing, right? But you run into Shaq and Kobe, and I'm not saying Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray are Shaq and Kobe. They're far from it. But like, yeah, like when it comes down to that, you just lose because your top guy isn't as good as their top guy. And it's just, I don't know. Anyways, I hope Jason Tatum can ascend. I hope the bump that he took was not too serious, but let's move on. There's just not a lot to talk about with this game. One game that there is a lot to talk about, which is the LA Clippers shocking the shit out of the world, coming out to what was just a crazy surge. Like it was pretty close, and then it just wasn't. It was 22, it was 18, 20 to 26, right? The Clippers were leading, and suddenly you look up and it was 40 to 22 Clippers, and you're like, is Kawhi playing? No, he is not playing. Is Luka Doncic playing? Yes, he is playing. Is Kyrie Irving playing? Yes. Like if you just tuned into this game, or if you just flashed your phone on, you would not be you'd be forgiven for having to do a double take here. I mean, I think most people, like the Mavericks, were the odds-on favorite coming into this game to win. So were the Pacers to win their game, even though they were the road teams in a game one. Like there's enough experience on both sides between Pascal Siakam, Luka Doncic. These guys should be able to carry forth an opportunity like this. And again, opportunities like this do not grow on trees because in both cases, in my opinion, the more talented team is the other team. It just so happens that Giannis and Kawhi are not playing. And so both these teams needed to capitalize on this because you don't know how long Kawhi is not going to play. Like with Giannis, it might be a couple more games where he's going to be out. Kawhi can come back next game. I really don't know. And at that point, like you're dealing with a real issue because some of the stuff that the Clippers exploited with the Mavericks is just, it's very interesting. Okay. Zigsaw said, I did a double take at halftime. Yeah, for real. Okay, let's make me a little bit bigger here. Let's talk about this. So in terms of like what we got from the Dallas Mavericks tonight, right? We got a massive Luka Doncic performance. And a lot of people are going to look at this and be like, oh, he had 33 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 turnovers. His teammates need to show up for Luka. I think Luka needs to show up for his teammates defensively. And I think that Jason Kidd is going to have to do a lot to hide him because basically he got cooked tonight. Okay. It didn't really matter who got him. Basically, it was like he was getting passed around, bro. This was like he was running trains up in here, right? Like this dude, like they were just screen who has Luca? Okay, cross, boom, get Luca. Okay, one on one, get to the paint, kick out, boom. Like it was relentless. It didn't matter who it was. And Paul George, like he can't guard anybody. He cannot guard Norman Powell. He can't guard Trey Mann. He can't guard James Harden. He can't guard Russell. Like, okay, there's the thing. He can guard Russell Westbrook, and he's probably going to have to guard Russell Westbrook because honestly, you're going to have to do with Luka what the Denver Nuggets did with Jamal Murray last year, which is, you know, if you saw Denver versus the Lakers last year, that series, they tried to pick on Jamal Murray a lot, right? And so you couldn't put Jamal Murray on LeBron. You couldn't put Jamal Murray on AD. You couldn't put Jamal Murray on even Rui Hachimura. You couldn't put him on D'Angelo Russell. You really had to put him on a guy who is a little bit more limited offensively. And I think in order for a guy to be limited offensively, he has to not be a movement shooter and he has to not be like a great like penetrator. Like there has to be some sort of like one-dimensional nature to his game. A great example of this is like a PJ Tucker. See, teams are going away from having guys like PJ Tucker or Matisse Thybulle and guys like this. And, you know, for the Raptors' sake, they should understand that teams are going away from guys like Ochai Agbaji because guys like this present avenues to play non-defenders and hide non-defenders on the court. And for a league that has so many non-defenders in starring roles, Trey Young is a good example. Tyrese Halliburton's a good example. Damian Lillard is a good example. Luka Doncic is a good example. Karl-Anthony Towns to some degree, but to a way lesser degree because of his size, is an example. There are a lot of teams that play with guys who are considered defensive liabilities. And some of those defensive liabilities, Anthony Simons, you know, for the Portland Trailblazers, I hope not long term, but RJ Barrett for the Toronto Raptors. There are a lot of guys, you know, who just don't guard very well, and you can milk that. Pascal Siakam, you know, has been, you know, like he's been beneficial, but like, well, who is he really replacing? Buddy Hield? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're gonna get better, but he was a defensive liability as well. There just aren't a lot of teams like the New York Knicks where like almost everyone's a positive defender and everyone can just plug in for each other, or like the, you know, 1920 Toronto Raptors where like everyone's a positive defender. Like usually teams are playing one guy who is a bit of a defensive liability. And if teams can just scheme that guy out, you have to find ways to cover for that guy. And usually the best way to cover for that guy is to put him on the least dynamic scorer on the other end, which is the guy who can do the least amount of stuff, which is like your standstill stretch big, or your corner shooter who can't really dribble, or your shooter who can shoot but maybe can't shoot off movement. So a guy like Dennis Schroeder is a great example of a guy that you can sometimes hide someone on, and that's exactly what they did last year with Jamal Murray. They hid Jamal Murray on Dennis Schroeder, and because they couldn't do it with Austin Reeves. Right, Austin Reeves presented too much of an issue as a movement shooter and as a guy who can get downhill and finish and, you know, do some creation stuff. So yeah, that's basically why you don't want to be playing guys like Gabe Vincent, Dennis Schroeder, guys like this, because again, they present they present the other team with a breath, right? And so they're gonna have to find a way to get Luka off of basically everyone who can cook him, which is just about everybody except for Trey Mann and Russell Westbrook. So until Kawhi comes back, but when Kawhi comes back, it's going to be really hard, right? Because if you can't hide him on Zubats, right? Because then who would you play Gafford on? This is just a really bad matchup. Like the James Harden component of this, if James Harden continues to play the way he played today, and I mean, like he played incredibly today. Like look at the stats here tonight. Like I mean, like the stats are meaningless to me, really. But like, I mean, in terms of like what they got. And I mean, Daniel Gafford played 14 minutes because it was pretty obvious that he just could not deal with Ivica Zubac inside. Zubac had 20 points and 15 rebounds, and believe me, it's not empty. Like, he was force pressure, constant, right? James Harden had 28. Paul George had 22. A lot of people are going to kind of sneeze at Paul George's 22 and be like, oh, no big deal, 8 for 20, blah, blah, blah. Playoff P, choking again. No, man. Like, he was really good. Like, down the stretch, whenever it felt like, could it get a little bit? No, you know. And believe it or not, the Mavericks are still favored to win this series. Well, not by me, but by Vegas. They're still technically favored to win this series. They're still technically favored to win game 2. For whatever reason, people think that the Dallas Mavericks are just going to be able to turn it on. And I'm just telling you, like, with multiple defensive liabilities and with no real hopes of stopping Ivica Zubac inside, 4 offensive rebounds, I think he could have had more. And with him, really protecting the paint on the inside, like, it's going to require some very, very, very special Luka Doncic and, Kyrie Irving stuff. And the problem is Kyrie Irving, like, I mean, he scored 31 and Luka Doncic scores 33. And you could argue, like, nobody else did anything. But it's like, that's the bulk of the guys who are taking your fucking shots. What do you want? What do you want Derek Lively to do with his 3 shot attempts? What do you want Tim Hardaway to do with his 5? And they were very upset with their teammates at times. And there's a lot of clips of them yelling at their teammates and whatnot. But truth be told, like, there's just, it was surprising to see. If you take the Zubats Gafford matchup and just flip it, like, let's just say, like, before the game, the teams met up and were like, "Oh, want to trade Ivica Zubats for Daniel Gafford?" I can almost guarantee you that the Mavericks win this game. It's that simple. It's just that matchup. It's putting so much pressure on the inside and on the other end. Like, and Daniel Gafford is no scrub. He just doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, right? Like, Zubats been in and out, in and out, in and out, and it's just like, I thought the Clippers just brought so much physicality. And I think, like, if you really want to talk about physicality being the dominating, like, the word of the day, that is the word of the day for me. Feels like physicality, like, the team that was more physical in almost every single matchup won, with the exception of the first one, right? Like, the Heat can be as physical as they want. They're not going to make up the talent gap. But almost every other team, the team that was more physical, I mean, the Pacers were a turnstile, and it showed, and they lost, right? The Dallas Mavericks were a turnstile, and they lost, right? And we'll spend a lot of time talking about the OKC Pelicans game, which had, like, I think 40 lead changes or ties. It was an incredible game to watch. I was on Twitter. If you're not following Pensari Basketball on Twitter, Pensari at Pensari B-Ball, I was like, if you're not watching this game, like, Thunder Pelicans was incredible. So yeah. But anyways, I expect a better result from the Mavericks. I expect some adjustments. Jason Kidd will definitely look at that film and find ways to, get Luka. This is a team with title aspirations for sure. Both of these teams have title aspirations. It is a very, very good 4-5 matchup. If Kawhi comes back, there's no guarantee that you get automatically better, but it does offer you one more defender on Luka Doncic. It does give you one more guy to kind of just crater their defense. It's just one more guy. It's just like the Clippers, weirdly enough, are like a very, very, very good version of whatever the hell the Suns are trying to do, right? It's just that they're other guys. Like, there is a gap between Zubats and, I don't know, a guy like Nurkic, right? There's such a gap between, like, the stuff that the Clippers' big 3 have around them, right? Like, even if you're going to talk about a guy like, I don't know, like Russell Westbrook, right? Not my favorite player. I've written a lot of stuff about, not liking him as a player, but, like, man, he showed up tonight. I think he played reasonably well. He had a big time alley-oop. It was a big, momentum builder from James Harden. I just think James Harden, like, every single time he plays, I'm just reminded of him saying, I am a system, and how much I defended him when he said that. I mean, to those of you who follow me for a long time, I don't tolerate James Harden slander. I don't talk shit about James Harden. I don't talk about him being fat. I don't talk about him being a playoff choker. I just don't talk about it because, honestly, I just appreciate him as a basketball player. Like, his brilliance as a passer, his vision for the game is actually just something I pay to watch. Like, I love watching James Harden play basketball. People find that very surprising because I'm not really a fan of chuckers. I'm not really a fan of like heliocentric hubs, but it's just like very rarely in NBA history have I felt someone deserved 35 to 38% usage. He's one of those guys who really just makes great decisions with the basketball. Um, and today he made a ton of great decisions with basketball. He was better than Luka Doncic, in my opinion, today. He was better than Kyrie Irving today, and the Clippers won for it. He was the engine that made him go. He made correct decision after correct decision. It was like watching a chess grandmaster just dissect his prey. I could see a situation in which the Mavericks steal game two, though. I definitely could. And these teams are pretty evenly matched, in my opinion, right now. But I do believe that Kawhi tilts the balance in the Clippers' favor. It's just, I think a lot of people, because the Clippers kind of stumbled into the playoffs, we forget that they were the number one seed for a little bit. We forget how well they played in that sustained stretch after the James Harden trade, after they had that 5, 6 games or whatever losing, and everyone's like, oh my God, you traded for James Harden. He's terrible. And they went on that crazy run. I think they showed themselves that they are capable of beating anybody, including Denver. Like, they have the personnel to beat anyone in the league. There's no team that is better equipped to beat Boston. There's no team better equipped to beat Denver. It's just, I think that a lot of people just felt Kawhi's health and, everything going on with their locker room, Paul George, his contract situation. I felt like it just felt like a messy team to root for, but the talent is all there. The pieces are all there. And Ty Lue is, in my opinion, just a better coach than most coaches in the West. His adjustments, and you can believe that he's not resting on his laurels because they won this game. He's probably going to make adjustments. So Jason Kidd better bring his A game next game. Moving on to the Damian Lillard 35 piece and the Pascal Siakam showcase exhibition. This is interesting. Patrick Beverly gets to, uh, have a confrontation with the guy who he said he wouldn't be afraid of in a dark alleyway. And Pascal Siakam narrowly edges out Damian Lillard for, on one more shot. He managed to get 36 points, and he missed 5 free throws along the way in order to get his 36 points, which is crazy because he could have had 40 easy. He had 13 rebounds, and really, he was the only bright spot for he was one of 2 bright spots really for the Indiana Pacers. He was the offensive bright spot, and I can explain why he went off the way he did. But the second thing that I think the Indiana Pacers should probably be happy about in this game, although it does feel like a very squandered opportunity, and I will not mince words, it was a squandered opportunity, is that they really did manage to hold Damian Lillard to 0 points in the second half, and I do not trust what is around him right now to consistently beat the team. Honestly, if you're um, if you're Rick Carlisle and you're looking at this footage, you'll say, okay, we won the second half shutting down Dame. And they did, right? Like the second quarter in which Damian Lillard just got off. I mean, really, he started getting off in the end of the first quarter, and the second quarter was just a straight up blowout, 39-21. And the Indiana Pacers looked like they were shell shocked, right? Like, what was the score at the half? Hold on, let me just pull this up for a sec. Like, this game was insanity. The score at halftime was 69. Hold on. 69 to 42. 69-42, man. Like, this game was over, and then suddenly it wasn't over anymore. And that run in the third quarter was sparked mainly by Andrew Nemhard and Aaron Nesmith and Miles Turner, and just really just a damn focus on getting the ball out of Damian Lillard's hands. It reminded me a lot of what Nick Nurse did to Jalen Brunson. I don't think, someone commented earlier in this chat that I think this Bucks team is better than any team Damian Lillard played with in Portland. I disagree super hard. If he had even a CJ McCollum right now to release some of the pressure that they're putting on him, like, this game would have been so much better for the Bucks. But they don't have that right now. And they don't have a Grayson Allen, right? There's just not a lot here. When you look at their bench, right? When you look at hold on, let me pull this up. When you look at their bench, what is coming off their bench right now? Pat Connaughton, Malik Beasley. Like Malik Beasley hit like three very big threes, and I think like he was a huge part of what went right for them. Jay Crowder, Patrick Beverly is starting and playing 37 minutes for you. Again, reminds me a lot of what you would be getting from like a Kyle Lowry, like a lot of grit, toughness. You know what I mean? He was an overwhelming positive. Damian Lillard, interestingly enough, -6. Brook Lopez, -5 in a game that you win by 15 points. Your best player was a negative, right? It is interesting to note. This is a very similar thing with Zion Williamson, in which um, you sometimes wonder if like their offensive dominance can sometimes make the team stagnant, right? Like he was um I mean, just think about like Damian Lillard being -6 in this game and how crazy that is, right? They went on a massive, massive run and he was on the court for all of it. Defensively, he is obviously compromised. But what is most surprising here is Tyrese Halliburton with 9 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds in what is effectively his first playoff game, right? I think this is his first playoff game, right? Tyrese Halliburton never in the playoffs. The physicality of this game from the Bucks side, like the Bucks came out and hit him hard, right? There's a lot of Patrick Beverly in there, a lot of Bobby Portis, right? Who was kind of like a token starter, Malik Beasley, Burke Lopez. Like there's a lot of size in there. And Tyrese Halliburton was not even looking to score. Like some of the shots he took were just crazy. But you do not want to see like Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam with a combined 42 shots and Tyrese Halliburton with 7. Right? That's crazy. And it's all on him. It's all on him. He there's no player in the NBA who underwhelmed more in the playoffs so far than him. No player. This was like he was the anti-Caleb Martin of last year. Y'all remember Caleb Martin going crazy against the Boston Celtics, and we were like, where the hell? Who the hell? Wow. Like, who is this guy? Tyrese Halliburton was the opposite of that. He pretty much looked like TJ McConnell out there. Like, he was worse than TJ McConnell. Is that crazy to say? I mean, shit, at least TJ McConnell cracked double digits and took 13 fucking shots. Like, he was trying to be aggressive. Like, you can't be this timid in your first playoff game. I understand jitters. I understand that, but I would have been so much more encouraged if Tyrese Halliburton had just taken like 20 shots and gone like 3 for 20. He wasn't there tonight. I mean, and if he's not putting pressure on the rim, and I mean, yeah, you could argue that that's a lot of what Milwaukee wanted to do. They wanted to take the ball out of his hands, and that worked. And let's talk about Pascal Siakam, right? 36 points, 15 for 25. A lot of Raptor fans are like, we got rid of this. We got rid of this for Bruce Brown and 3 first-round picks. Are we crazy? Okay. Please understand. The paint was open for a reason. Backdoor cuts were a given for a reason. And he was going one-on-one against Bobby Portis. And I said this like even in the Washington series. Sorry, not Washington series. The Washington game or Dallas game. I believe Dallas decided to do this with him as well, where they just played him straight up and they're just like, do whatever you want. You're not going to beat us. Teams will often take a suboptimal isolation scorer like a Pascal Siakam and just say, our game plan is you do whatever the fuck you want. We're gonna contest it. We're gonna try our best, but we're not sending doubles at you. We're gonna stay home on everybody else. We're gonna shut down Andrew Nemhard. We're gonna make sure that Tyrese Halliburton doesn't get going, start penetrating, and start sparking the offense. And we're just gonna trust that you're not gonna score efficiently enough. And tonight he did score pretty efficiently, right? 15 for 25. That's 60%. He scored very efficiently. But we're going to trust that those jumpers at some point, that three that you made, those mid-range jumpers that you made, like they're just not going to go in. And I'll tell you right now, it's a solid game plan. It's a solid game plan. You know, this would be like, I mean, let's say for instance, I'm game planning against the Toronto Raptors, right? Let's just say I'm like, okay, I'm not letting Scotty Barnes touch the ball inside the 3-point arc. He can take whatever, he can take whatever touch, but if he gets into the paint, I'm setting a quick double onto him. This is going to funnel the basketball away from him. Same thing with Emmanuel quickly. Let's say I'm just game planning as a coach coaching against the Toronto Raptors with with Emmanuel quickly. I'm going to send a double to him outside the 3-point line. I'm going to get the ball out of his hands, and I'm going to trust that he's not quick enough as a decision maker to really scramble me or like hurt me. And I'm going to make it so that I'm going to guard RJ Barrett one-on-one. I'm not sending help. I'm not sending doubles. I'm barely even sending a hand into the paint when he drives. I'm just going to let him score 30, 35, and that's going to be my game plan. That he's going to score 30 to 35. He's going to feel like it's his night. And frankly, he's not going to beat me. RJ Barrett is not going to beat me. And that's what I would bank on. And I think that they did a very similar thing here, right? They did a very similar thing with you know, um, Pascal Siakam, where it's just like our game plan is Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, take all the shots you fucking want. You're not going to beat us. But if we start letting, Tyrese Halliburton start splashing threes and getting into the paint and sparking the fast break and getting everyone involved and starting to like orchestrate the offense. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton is a way better playmaker, passer than any player on his team, and it's not close. It's not like the second guy is like, oh, he's kind of Tyrese Halliburton-esh. He's not. Okay. It's like Scotty Barnes. He's an even better passer than Scotty Barnes. And so once you start taking the ball out of his hands, well, now what is he? Is he a great rebounder? No. Is he a great offensive rebounder? No. Is he a great defender? No. You're taking him out of the game by taking the ball out of his hands. It's a very similar thing. Again, we're seeing a lot of point guards. They're kind of like being picked on this way, and that's happening with him too. And he didn't force it, and that's great for him. But I think sometimes, the pressure of the moment can get very large. The physicality of the playoffs is maybe something he's not used to. A lot of players are not used to it initially in the first go around, and it shakes some guys. You know, there was a point in the game, interestingly enough, where Andrew Nemhard, gets into Damian Lillard's face, and I think that game really, really turned around for the Pacers at that moment, which is interesting because, the commentators were like, don't poke the bear. And in my head, I was just like, don't poke the bear. What are you doing? Damian Lillard, like this is, and I was very encouraged by how Pascal Siakam handled the game from that point on, because typically I've always felt like Pascal Siakam was a guy who just kind of became timid in those moments where things got chippy or physical, but he didn't actually. He started to play even harder, and I appreciated that about him. So big game for Pascal Siakam. 36 points, 13 rebounds. I don't even want to think where they would have been without him willing to take that load on. But I'm just saying, if the game plan is, hey, if they take Tyrese Halliburton out, no big deal. We'll just give it to Siakam and we'll just let him cook. You're going to lose this series so fucking bad. Like, you're going to have to get your main guy has to be your main guy. Like, he has to run the offense. He has to be involved. And he'll be able to find Siakam. He'll be able to initiate easier looks. Because again, once you start putting the ball out of your main guy's hands, you start to see all the cracks kind of show up, right? Which is that, like, everybody else starts to struggle because Tyrese Halliburton, he's gonna put it right in your shooter pocket. He's gonna get you right on the cut. He's gonna find all those little gaps and openings in the Bucks defense, and trust me, there are plenty of gaps in the Bucks defense right now. If you think the Bucks are going anywhere past this series without Giannis, you're fucking crazy. Like, they're not going to beat anybody else. But the Pacers have such an atrocious defense that everybody is engaged and active against this team. Everyone can score against this team. And they're going to have to do something about that. They're going to have to, again, what I said with Luka, they're going to have to hide this guy. Like, somehow they're going to have to hide Tyrese Halliburton. They're going to have to do, something about Pascal Siakam's rotations. They're going to have to figure out paint defense. They have a shot blocker in theory in Miles Turner, who has a crazy wingspan. Why he is not a better better able to do that? Probably because, he's got point of attack leakage everywhere. So playing Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nemhard does balance it out because those guys get into the ball and they apply a lot of ball pressure. So in theory, this team should be a pretty decent defensive team, shouldn't they? Because in theory, again, Pascal Siakam's a good defender. Aaron Nesmith's a really good defender. Andrew Nemhard's a good defender. Miles Turner's a good defender. Why do they suck so badly at defense? By the way, Rick Carlisle is a really, really good defensive coach. He's one of the best defensive coaches in the league. In fact, that's how he broke that's how he broke into the league as a great defensive coach. So how is this team so bad defensively? I think it's partially because two of their so-called great defenders are not great defenders or even good defenders. They're just very overrated as defenders. And Tyrese Halliburton is really that bad defensively. Um, it's just a lot of miscommunications, man. A lot of miscommunication, a lot of sloppy play. And I just don't think like they played with enough force. Interestingly enough, they did play with a lot more force and energy and physicality in the second half. And I think that it paid off. So maybe they found something, maybe they discovered something. But I'll tell you right now, if Giannis comes back by game 3, this is going to be a Bucks win. Like they don't have anything. Like if they're struggling right now with Bobby Portis and Chris Middleton, who was awesome, by the way. Chris Middleton was incredible, 23 points, 10 rebounds. He really turned back the clock. If they're struggling with those guys, like wait till Giannis comes back. Even if he's 80%, he is going to kill them. Like this series will be very over. So they wasted a very winnable opportunity here because if Giannis is back by game 3, game 4, whatever, like you could be up 3-1 at that point, in which case you're putting the onus on them to win 3 straight, and they may not be able to win 3 straight based on his health. But honestly, man, like their defense is so bad. I mean, we saw it when the Raptors played them. Like it was just, I think it was the first time they played him. Pascal Siakam was still on the team and he scored 36 points. Like it was just like, it's too easy. Everything's too easy against this team. They're very soft. Their identity is very soft. They're a very finesse team. They take a lot of threes. And now they got Pascal Siakam in there who doesn't take enough threes. And it's just like, I don't know, man. I think the jig is up. I think they had a really, really good start to the season. But I don't think it's just missing Ben Mathurin. I think they'll miss his shot making, of course, but I just think this is not a very good team. Obi Toppin off the bench provided some pretty good defense. I think Jalen Smith won his minutes. I think overall, like the bench did a pretty decent job. But the first time they went to their bench, they really, really lost it, right? And Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nemhard, like these guys in a 15-point blowout, like they managed to be borderline even. They were like +2, -2, -3. And Aaron Nesmith, he actually was dead even, 0, despite having a really cold shooting night where he went 1 for 7. I don't think their shooters are going to be this cold next time. Like Obi Toppin going 0 for 4, TJ McConnell going 0 for 3 is pretty much, that's possible. But Ben Shepherd going 1 for 4, Pascal Siakam going 1 for 4, Aaron Nesmith 1 for 7, Miles Turner 3 for 9. Like they shot abysmally. They shot 21% from 3. They didn't get their transition game going. They shot 66% from the line. I mean, the Bucks, to some extent, like the second half the Bucks played was just so bad. They have to figure something out if they're going to survive this series without Giannis. Moving on to the final game, and by far the most interesting game of the night. I don't like to talk about sports betting, but I'll briefly mention something. There was literally one outcome, which could have happened in this game, which was a 3-point or less OKC win that I was praying on not happening, because I had a belief, and I might have mentioned it yesterday, that the Pelicans would be very competitive in this game, and I didn't think that Vegas was giving them enough credit for that. So I started smashing bets on +20, +18, +16, +14 for the Pelicans because I felt that they would massively, I thought they would cover. But I wasn't comfortable to say like they would cover +6, +5. So I took the OKC Thunder -4.5, so -4.5. Thankfully, that bet was covered by all those covers by the Pelicans, but had the OKC Thunder won by 5, i.e. had Chet Holmgren hit that fucking free throw, and maybe like the Pelicans took their shot earlier and fouled, like I would have cleared both ends. Like I was so right about this. I was just wrong by 2 points. It sucks. But the way I structure sports betting is I structure it so I don't really lose very much or very often ever. But when I win, it is like a big win. And again, within this confine of hedging all these bets throughout the game, I had created a situation in which if the Pelicans had won, it was like a massive payout. If the Thunder had won by 5, it was a massive payout. If the Thunder had won by 12, it would have been a pretty massive payout, not as massive. But basically, there was like one outcome which I was praying against, which was Thunder win by 2, 1, 2, or 3 points, and fuck, they win by 2. Anyways, um, really hard fought game. Really hard fought game both ways. I think both teams brought it. Um, I was very impressed with the Pelicans. They are right up there with the Clippers for teams that I'm most impressed by in the playoffs so far. Um, I think, their shooters struggled a little bit. Najee Marshall and Jose Alvarado going 1 for 4 apiece. They didn't get a lot of scoring off their bench. Larry Nance, he was great. And they got that sequence with the 4 offensive rebounds towards the end, and they couldn't make anything. And then right at the end, CJ McCollum to get the ball in his hands, and you're like literally the one guy who's being guarded by Lou Dort, and you're like, not that guy. Don't go at Lou Dort, and they go at Lou Dort, and they get this terrible shot. Poor execution. Brandon Ingram really forced a lot of really dumbass shots. 5 for 17. I don't think they saw the best version of this team yet. So if you're OKC, you got to look at this like you dodged a bullet here. Um, you don't really have much of a home court advantage here either because you are facing off against the best road team in the playoffs. The Pelicans are awesome. They're 28-14 on the road. Now 28-15 after this loss, but really, like this could have gone either way. For their part, I don't think the OKC Thunder shot particularly well either. They shot 31% from 3 tonight, and they had a lot of makeable shots. I was very impressed by Chet Holmgren in his playoff debut as a rookie. I mean, wow, right? 15 points, 11 rebounds, 5 blocks, none bigger than the last one on Larry Nance, which I thought was just incredible. Josh Giddey is virtually unplayable. I think they have to consider not playing him anymore. If they don't want to fuck around like right now, they have a way better chance winning this series with Wiggins, Wallace, or Joe. Like they have 3 guys. Honestly, you might even have a better chance winning this series with Gordon Hayward. You have 4 guys who play his position basically, who can easily jump in. And I mean, my God, their lineup is so weirdly switchable that you could make a very solid case that Josh Giddey is like, I mean, if you play Shea and Jalen Williams at the 1-2, right? Then you could easily go with the other Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren up front, right? Like you could do that in theory. And I was very impressed with the other Jalen Williams. So J Will instead of J Dub. I mean, I thought they both played well. But J Will, getting tied up and really showing some physicality towards Jonas Valanciunas, maybe you need a little bit more size in there, right? I'm telling you right now, Josh Giddey's playmaking is not doing shit for you. He had 2 turnovers, including one very terrible one. In 20 minutes, he went 1 for 6, 0 for 2. They're ignoring him. I just think he's been terrible. Like I think he's genuinely horrible. And I think you just it, he's not a bad player. He's just somehow like they have just taken his value and just squandered it into the ground. And I'm sure that it has a lot to do with the personal stuff that he dealt with this season. They probably do not happy with the fact. Um, way too smoky saying Giddey's unplayable. He really is. Like defensively, he's your weakest defender in that lineup. Offensively, he's a spacing nightmare. I mean, they're picking on him, right? And I mean, he's big, I'll give you that. But he had 3 rebounds. Like he is really, really bad. They were better without him. And ironically, he ends up being +7, which gives you some context into plus minus not being very valuable. In that sense. But yeah, like I just didn't like his minutes. Shai Gilgeous Alexander, he had some struggles tonight. 11 for 24, 0 for 3 from 3. Not a big 3-point volume guy, but 28 points, none bigger than the 2 points plus 1 and 1 that he had down the stretch. I thought he was impressive. The lights got real bright and it got real physical for him. and they did a great job. They blocked his shot. Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, like this is crazy. Like what you're up against in terms of length and size with this team. I really do believe, and I still believe, that the Pelicans have a chance in this series. I do not think they are done. I do not think they're going to get swept. I think this series could go 6. I think it easily go 7. I think the Jonas Valanciunas versus Chet Holmgren thing is real. Like I think Jonas can do whatever the fuck he wants down there, and I admire Chet like more than I ever have before for fight, like how he fights and how he competes down there, and he's getting knocked around. And Jonas Valanciunas is like like he's like Fred Van Vliet strength, but in a 7-footer. Y'all know what I mean? Like he's farmer strength. You ever play against a guy who is farmer strength? I have. My ex-girlfriend's dad, he had farmer strength. Like those guys, like move them, they don't move. They're like a fucking it's like a house. It hurts to play against those people. You have bruises all over your body. There are bruises on parts of your body you didn't even know existed after you play those guys. JV is beastly strong, and Chet Holmgren is not right now. And they're gonna have to go through this growing pain. And I can already hear a lot of people saying they gotta draft, they gotta draft, Zach Edey. They gotta make this right. Oh, they're not going to draft Zach Edey. I remain confirmed that as much as people want them or did want them to trade for a guy who was big and bulky, whatever, and they're going to go through this every step of the way, right? They're going to go through this. They're going to go through this. Like if they make it to the next round, they'll go through this with Zubats. And if they make it to the round after that, they're going to have to go through Jokic. Like, and if they don't, and if Jokic doesn't make it through, they're gonna have to go through this with AD. Like, it's literally every round they're gonna have to go up against. Like, Chet Holmgren might die in the middle of one in this playoff run because it's hard, right? But the physicality element of this is very important to realize that it's not always about size. They have to guard him too, and I think as he becomes more comfortable. He already looks really comfortable. 6 for 14, 2 for 6 from 3, whatever. Like his skill, his agility, his ability to handle the basketball, pass the basketball is going to present a lot of issues for some of these slower lumbering centers as well. I was very impressed by his compete level tonight. Overall, I think, tough loss for the Pelicans, but this should be something that Willie Green uses to encourage his team, not, to hang their heads and just say, hey, man, like we're in this series. Like, again, when you're a really great road team, like they are a really great road team, you don't have a home court advantage really. So there's nothing that says that, I don't know, like, okay, you're down, like because you're an 8 seed. So, oh my God, the tough thing is we have to win we have to win one on the road. No, man, this is like, I would be surprised by the end of the series if the Pelicans didn't win one on the road. Now it's just a matter of like protecting home court. They're not a great home team. So, maybe New Orleans. And I mean, interestingly enough, the OKC Thunder crowd. Wow. Wow. I love that crowd. I just love it. It's like a college team. You know what I mean? Like they are rowdy. There's not like a bunch of rich suits everywhere. It feels like a college town. It's really like it's special. As far as like NBA crowds go, my most hated NBA crowd, Miami. Like just passionless, disgusting fans. I mean, you can get behind, places like Boston and New York and Philly, right? Those fans are passionate. They give a shit. Miami is just always fair weather. Utah, ugh, hate Utah. Not that they're in the playoffs right now, but just not a fan of Utah fans. But man, OKC is special. So good win for them. They got the first one out of their system. And of course, as Raptor fans, we have been here before with Kyle, DeMar going through their first rodeo, and the nerves and all that stuff, it hits you hard. I think both teams can feel very, very good, um, walking away from this. Troy Knight's saying Mavs win the series, in my opinion. Cool. Yeah, like again, like I think that the Mavericks have the talent between Luka and Kyrie. You could argue they have two of the three best players in the series. That should usually give you a really good chance. I just think the other team has the fourth, fifth, and sixth best player, and that's a lot to overcome, especially because I do believe, given Luka and Kyrie's significant defensive issues, that if Kawhi comes back as anything close to the Kawhi he was earlier in the year, because he was really doing some MVP stuff, man, I gotta tell you. Like, Kawhi was top 5 player in the NBA when he was right this year. Like, he really turned back the clock for, like, a few weeks there, and it was, like, very incredible, his defense. If he comes back as that guy, yeah, he's gonna yeah, he's gonna be a problem for Dallas. And I know because of historical precedents that people really, really believe that this Dallas thing could go like 4 games, 7 games, and it's gonna be really interesting, and Dallas is gonna punch back. And I have no doubt that Dallas is gonna punch back. They're gonna make their adjustments. I just believe that the Clippers with Harden have a gear they can go to that the Dallas Mavericks cannot touch that gear. Now, again, will that version of Dallas show up? I think both these teams have so many question marks, right? Um, yeah. Anyways, so that wraps up my thoughts for today. Today was a very interesting day. I had to miss the first game, and I had to watch it later, which is why this live was so late. I had to basically piecemeal. So I watched the Boston Miami game, one half in between one game and then one half after. So I fully caught up. We were out and about, going all over the city, um, yard sales, meeting up with people on Facebook Marketplace, trying to piece together my N64 collection. And we ended up getting 7 games. Doom 64, Quake, Quake 2. Ended up getting a second copy of Star Wars because it was just on such a great deal. Ended up getting a copy of Cruising USA because it was on such a great deal at the yard sale, and just like very clean copies of those games. Ended up getting Paper Mario and Super Smash Brothers, and I believe next weekend my final purchases will be Mace: The Dark Age and shit, what's it called? Mace: Dark Age, and of course Zelda Majora's Mask. So that's gonna be like my final, and then I'm done. Like I'm just like I just wanted to do this. I mentioned it yesterday's live. I just wanted this like collection of Nintendo 64 games and cartridges, and it was just something that I wanted to do for myself. I have actually spent the better part of the last 3 years tossing shit out. Books, clothes, suits, even valuable things like household appliances and shit. I just wanted to live with less and less and less and less. I wanted to be mobile, agile, whatever. Lean, mean, fighting machine. Okay. And something just really, I don't know, as I mentioned, like quitting smoking has just cut out all the addictions. And something like that has just brought me back to wanting to have an N64 and play some games. I don't know. It's weird. I have no idea where the hell it's come from, but it was a very interesting endeavor. And I thank all the vendors who made my pursuits of these various games possible. And yeah, it was fun. What is a clean copy of a cartridge game? Is it like a watch, box, and papers? Okay, so the when I say clean, I just mean like because N64 cartridges are like the way they are. Sorry, like this artwork on the N64 cartridge and this, like these are stickers basically, right? So typically people abuse their cartridges because Nintendo had the foresight of like idiots. They didn't give like proper cases for these. They gave box cases. And if you were like most kids, what you did, like what I did, was you threw away the box like a moron. I threw away those boxes. which are worth a lot right now. The other day I bid like $400 on Amazon trying to get 10 of those boxes back. Crazy. They're worth a lot now because people threw them out. So if you're a collector, they're worth a ton. Um, boxes plus manuals, etc. So now there's like an entire industry recreating those boxes, which is weird. But yeah, so basically, if the game's been like kind of neglected a lot or tossed around or improperly stored, a lot of things are going to happen. Number one, if it's one of the rare cartridges that uses a battery, probably the battery's dead. If it's not one of those cartridges, possibly because cartridges like right here, like the inside, if you see that, like those chips, so they can't really be exposed to moisture, right? The cartridge starts to like, yeah, cartridges are weird like that. So you have to keep it in a pretty dry place. You have to keep it away from the sun. You have to like do a lot of stuff to keep your cartridges in a good place, right? So typically, if you find a cartridge that has not been overly used, because a lot of these cartridges get passed around, passed around, passed around, you get resold like from 50 different places. Sometimes people pick them up and they're already in bad condition because they were at a rental house. These cartridges tend to go through a lot of wear and tear, and because they're not like CDs, you can't really buff them out. You would have to literally replace the motherboard, and you can't really do that without replacing the motherboard because they're not readily available. And you can't replace these stickers because then it wouldn't be original. It's very rare to find a cartridge that doesn't look like it's been through like a dump. You know what I mean? So that's been a bit of a challenge, right? Is because I don't want to just get all these like worn out, used, scratched up, dinged up, marked up cartridges. And a lot of rental houses, they had like writing all over the cartridges and permanent markers. So like that just fucks up the artwork, or they had stickers on the, and then when you tear the sticker off, you rip it. So you'd be surprised like just how disgusting the condition of some of these art, some of these cartridges are. And what got me thinking was, hey, like from an investment perspective, let me think this through here. 10 years from now, if there's another wave of interest in this, there will be like another 15 to 20% of these available cartridges that are going to be in abysmal shape. So let me be the person who has the perfect condition cartridges, even if I don't have the boxes and the manuals and whatever, which would be considered a CIB copy or whatever. So, anyways, I'm not a big time collector. I have a card collection full of like some like Andre Mariani, Chris Bosh, Gary Payton, Tim Duncan cards, whatever. But I wasn't like a really big collector of that. Tried to dabble into Marvel collecting cards. Didn't really go too far with that, and it was kind of a useless endeavor. But I will tell you, with video games, like it's crazy what some of these games are worth. We stopped by AC Games, just scam today. I'm sure it's a great place, but like man, the prices were insane. I was seeing Dreamcast games for like $285. Bro, these games were less than $8 just like 7 years ago. If you knew what you were looking for, you could have found these games for like $7 at any yard sale or any Goodwill or any thrift shop. They were everywhere. And now it's like $260. What the fuck? I was flabbergasted. Flabbergasted is the word. Basically COVID sparked a ton of interest in retro games. I'm very happy that I did not get into retro games 3.5 years ago. Otherwise, I think all these cartridges would have cost a lot more. Prices have gotten a little bit more reasonable. I don't think that the American vintage or retro game market has ever outperformed the S&P 500, and so you're always going to be better off tracing the stock market. But I do think that these cartridges are going to hold their value from today until 20 years from now better than probably paper money. So I figured, like, why not put like $500 of Canadian worthless money, which is just inflation, inflation, inflation. Why not put $500 of that Canadian money into something that reminds me of my parents and my grandparents? You know what I mean? So yeah. So my cartridge collection is almost complete. I had a goal to get. I made a list. I made an Excel sheet of 35 games, and I wanted those 35 games, and I have 27 of them now. So almost there. Anyways, I will do some more draft coverage. I'm finding it really hard to turn off the playoffs. I gotta be honest. Like maybe when a couple of these series, like I know I said I wanted to do a mock draft. So just to update on that, I have the video all done. I haven't said everything. I haven't added the graphics and stuff. So it's not really like the video's all done. It's the video clips are all done of the players. And I have a good idea of where I want to put them and everything, but I don't think it's like offering anything substantial above and beyond what I've already said about a lot of these players. There's only so many times I can tell you how interesting a player I think Yves Missi is, or show you a clip of him blocking some shots and running the floor and making some excellent reads. There just isn't a lot. And it is really, really weird, to talk about. Um, I'll tell you this. It's very apparent to me listening to people talk about this draft pick and whether or not it will convey and how it will convey, just random fans talking about it, that people really, really, really don't understand math. It's like, it's crazy. Like someone said to me the other day, or I read a tweet. I can't remember if someone said it to me or I read a tweet where someone said the Raptors are likely to pick 6th and 17th. It's like, no, they are not likely to pick 6th. It is like one of the least likely outcomes that they will pick 6th. It's actually it's more likely they'll pick 1st than it is that they'll pick 6th. But it's just like people are not looking at the odds. And so it's like if I start overemphasizing players who are in the top of the draft and I start pushing like a lot of, because the Raptors are not going to trade. I doubt that the Raptors will trade. If they lose that 6th pick, Michael Grange, pay attention. If they lose that 6th pick, I very much doubt that they would trade into the top half of the draft. And so my entire focus will be like top 10 onward guys. So I'll stop talking about Alex Sarr. I won't talk about Nikola Topic because there's no chance in hell Nikola Topic is going down to 17. You know what I mean? Like I'll zone in on a spec of players that I think are more interesting. And because this draft has, like we have currently, as it sits, we have 3 picks, right? Until we convey that first one, if we convey it, if we don't convey it, whatever. We have 3 picks. So it's like a ton of players to actually scout and go through. And I want to be very thorough because it's going to be a big deal. The Raptors are going to pick first on day 2 of the draft. That's cool. That's very unique. That's a very new thing. It's going to open up a complete new doorway of opportunities for, the Raptors to reevaluate their board. For instance, I'll give you an example. So let's say in last year, right? Prospect is falling down the board, like Cam Whitmore, and you were expecting to go 7th or 8th. You heard a rumor that he's never going to go past 9th, or he's not getting past Washington at 7th, and then Washington picks Bilal Coulibaly, and then all bets are off. And then you had another rumor that he's not going to go past Orlando at 11, and then Orlando picks Chet Howard. Now he's in free fall, and he's got all these medical concerns, and you don't know if Cam Whitmore is undraftable because you didn't work him out and your medical team did not clear him, and you really like Grady Dick. I'm not saying Grady Dick was the wrong choice. I'm just saying if the same thing happens next year, well, it won't change anything because they were first round picks. But let's say in the second round, a player who was supposed to go top 20 is available at 31. You now have a full 24 hours to clear up their medical, to check in with everybody, to do a quick round of call up his college coach, call up whatever, get your information, get your ducks in a row, right? So that 31st pick became 100% more valuable because, God forbid, if somebody slips on draft night, on the first day of draft night, and everybody wakes up to why they slipped and realizes it's not a really big deal, then that player is the first player off the board on day 2. The Raptors did a stroke of genius getting that Detroit pick included, because I'm telling you, that is not a normal 31st pick anymore. It is a very valuable 31st pick. And I want to scout it very thoroughly because I think it could be like an asset that brings in an actual rotation piece for the Raptors. That 31st pick might be more valuable than a 29th pick that the Raptors traded away. Actually, this might be really hard for you guys to believe. I would rather have the 31st pick in this draft than the 29th pick in this draft for a slew of reasons, because I don't think that moving down 2 picks is worth, I don't think moving up 2 picks is worth the disadvantage of being the last team to pick, or the second to last team to pick on day 1, plus having to guarantee contract to that player. First round picks come with guaranteed contracts. Second round pick can be a two-way guy. Remember that. So I think the Raptors, like, I don't think I've been super supportive of everything the Raptors did this year, but including that second round pick from Detroit and getting that pick was extremely, extremely important. And probably is it's if you don't include that second round pick, I still think that the Raptors won the trade with the Knicks. I love OG, but I still think the Raptors win that trade. But it's close. But with that second round pick, I believe it is like a clear home run for the Raptors. Like the Raptors got a really good deal done with the Knicks. Just so surprising. But yeah. Anyways, that's it for me. To the 85 to 90 of you who were in here for most of this, 95 of you, I really appreciate it. Again, these lives are happening super late. These games are going super late. And then I'm trying to round my ducks in a row and watch anything that I missed earlier. So these lives are super late. And, but I did say that I was going to talk about Denver Nuggets and the OKC Thunder and make sure that I would do a little bit more playoff coverage. And I'm very, very happy to say that people are watching these. So I hope you're getting something out of it. And yeah, in terms of like when we'll get to more like Raptors stuff, I think after May 12th will be a good safe bet because we'll have the lottery out of the way and we'll know for sure if the Raptors have that pick. Granted, even once you know the Raptors have the pick, you don't know that they're not going to trade it because that pick is technically tradable. And if the Raptors end up with the first overall pick, I wouldn't be surprised if they traded it. That's just my take. Because that first overall pick comes with such a huge, it comes up with such a huge cap hold, like cap hit, that first overall pick. And I really do believe that because it's not really worth it, like I wonder if they would either trade down and try to get an asset or clear something off their books, like maybe Bruce Brown plus the first overall pick for, I don't know, better player plus third overall pick, fourth overall pick, fifth overall pick. I don't know. I don't know what the value will be. But if they keep fourth or sixth, third, fourth, sixth, I expect them to keep it. And then we can definitely go deeper into the draft. I would also say if they give up the pick, I think at that point, I would also get deeper into the draft. Obviously, as we get into later rounds, there will be days off between these games, which will be very good. And there will be fewer games to focus on. Typically, with most playoff years, most NBA years, there's usually like 3 series that you can just sort of tune out. There are 3 series that I want to tune out in this year. The only thing that you could even remotely say is worth tuning out is Boston and Miami. But you're still watching the best team in the league. So you might as well watch it. Do you know what I mean? It's so much. Like we're watching like 3-4 games a day. So tomorrow will be 3 games and it'll be impossible to watch them all because 2 of them are basically happening concurrently. So you have to pick. And it's like, shit, how do I pick? I'm going to be switching back and forth. It's crazy. Luckily we just got cable installed in all 3 rooms. Like in the office we got cable, in the bedroom we got cable. So I'm just going to be like keeping one game on and one game on, and if one game becomes disinteresting or something, I'm just going to run to the other room. Or maybe, I don't know, I'll find a way to stream one game on my phone. I don't know, like I'm going to become one of those people that has 2 screens and just watching both games. I don't know, it's going to be crazy. Or picture in picture. I think Rogers allows you to do picture in picture. I hope Rogers is carrying both games. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm out. And Bert saying, hit the button, you filthy animals, in the tune of Home Alone. Appreciate it, man. All right, take care. Peace.